Good news, the EU is no longer just going after Apple. There are now other FANG companies being targeted. In this case, it's AWS. When I first thought of the EU hopping in the infra world to try and make regulations, I was a little bit scared. Not a little, I was a lot of it scared. Just the concept of the EU getting involved in how I run my infrastructure company was admittedly scary to me. But after reading this, I actually kind of like the impact that EU and new rules and regulations are having. Let's take a look at what I'm talking about here. Free data transfer out to internet when moving out of AWS. If you didn't already know this, pretty much every AWS service charges money when things are exported or accessed externally. You can do things within the AWS cloud for free, but as soon as you want to, export the data to another cloud, they charge fees, often egregious ones, in order to make that a non-viable path. The EU jumped on this saying it was unfair. Now let's take a look at the result. You told us one of the primary reasons to adopt AWS was the broad choice available in services that they offer, enabling you to innovate, build, deploy, and monitor your workloads. AWS has continuously expanded its services to support virtually any cloud workload. It now offers over 200 fully featured services for compute, storage, databases, networking, analytics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, as well as many more. For example, the Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud offers 750 generally available instances, more than any other major cloud provider. Cool. Stop bragging. We believe this choice must include the one to migrate your data to another cloud provider or on-premises. That's why, starting today, we're waiving data transfer out to the internet charges entirely when you move out of AWS. That's a huge change there. This might invent a new category of startup type huge change. If you no longer have to pay a massive fee to export your data somewhere else, that's huge. Over 90% of our customers already incur no data transfer expenses out of AWS because we provide 100 gigabytes per month free from AWS regions to the internet. This is a weird thing to cite, but sure. If you're transferring less than 100 gigs a month, you don't have to pay anything. But if you're doing more than that, which a lot of businesses are, those fees get expensive. If we just look at like S3 costs, S3's storage might seem really cheap at 2 cents per gig, but where it gets expensive is once you're actually accessing the data. The retrievals, just for calling the APIs, are going to cost you money just for making those requests. And then the actual data loading, especially if you're throwing your data in like Glacier or infrequent access tiers, costs you money per gig, sometimes even more money per gig than the storage, which is insane. Like an S3 standard infrequent access fetch is $0.01 per gig. Archive data is 3 cents per gig. You got to pay money to access these things. And if you're exporting them all at once, those fees can get pretty absurd pretty quickly. There are cool services like this that show you how much a given service will cost you. If I bump the data transfer out to 1 gig, you'll see Glacier becomes 47 cents. But if I transfer out 100 gigs instead, we just 10x the cost. We're now $10 a month instead of 47 cents. Okay, not 10x, but you get the idea. That's a pretty massive bump. And if you end up going to, a terabyte of traffic instead, now we're talking hundreds of dollars instead. It's so easy for just transferring data out of your service to end up becoming a massive expense. We're talking, I'm assuming that's just like where the number caps on the service. But if we go to like 100 terabytes, that's $8,700 just to transfer out your terabytes of data. Even like 10 terabytes, which is a reasonable number, as crazy as it sounds. I have 10 terabytes of video stored on my server downstairs. Still $1,000 a month, or just for this transfer. Here's how much getting your data out of the cloud costs on all of these different services. Cloudflare is usually free here. Linode is $5 per terabyte. We got to scroll a bit for AWS. $92 per terabyte. And this is assuming something, I'm sure. Oh, is this just... Yeah, this is the terabyte of egress overage cost. So this is generic AWS S3 costs. I will say when people look at this, they often cite this incorrectly because they're like, look, Vercel and Netlify are so expensive. That's because these are CDN cached storage. This isn't a bunch of files being arbitrarily stored in something like S3. These are fundamentally different services. So for Vercel and Netlify's CDN caching to even be within the range of AWS's price here is fucking absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Oh, and by the way, if you're curious how much we charge for upload thing, egress, I'll show you. Nothing. Unlimited uploads and downloads on all tiers. We charge you for how much storage you're using. That's it. If you end up fetching a file 1,000 times, it costs the same as if you never fetch it at all, because we don't think that is a pricing model that makes sense. If we're going to piss you off, we're not going to piss you off with egress costs. We're going to piss you off for making dark mode paid only, which I think is a much more reasonable thing to charge for than transferring to a different service. We don't want you to have to pay money if you end up not liking upload thing and move somewhere else. That is something that is our problem, not yours. If the reason is because of our dark mode being paid, that's on you. But if the reason is something else has better offerings for what you need, we want to support that. So to go back to the announcement, the change here includes traffic from EC2, S3, load balancer, and other things as well. In addition, they'll offer 1 terabyte of free data transfer out of Amazon CloudFront every month. And that's for everyone. That's not just for exporting your service. That's in general, you get a free terabyte of CloudFront egress, which is huge. If you need more than 100 gigs of data transfer out per month while transitioning, you can contact AWS support to ask for a free DTO rate for additional data. It's necessary to go through support because you make hundreds of millions of data transfers each day. And we generally do not know if the data transferred out to the internet is a normal part of your business or a one-time transfer as part of a switch to another cloud provider or on-premises. It's fair that this is behind support. It's annoying, but I get why they did it because this is really hard to keep track of otherwise. We will review requests at the AWS account level. Once approved, we'll provide credits for the data being migrated. We don't require you to close your account or change your relationship with AWS in any way. You're welcome to come back at any time. This is a nice thing. I can't imagine the EU rulings enforce this, but it's nice that they're complying to this really well. We will, of course, apply additional scrutiny if the same AWS account applies multiple times for free DTO. Also fair. We believe in customer choice, including choice to move your data out of AWS. This waiver on data transfer out to the internet changes also follows the directions set by the European Data Act and is available to all AWS customers around the world and from any AWS region. I'm going to drop a hot take. This is a showcasing of complying with new rules and regulations really well. They understood the spirit of these laws, and instead of just barely following them like, I don't know, another company that's name begins with A might, they chose to not just follow them, but be relatively pro-consumer beyond what these regulations would expect. They're actually handling this really well. I would not have expected that. So yeah, thanks for setting an example for a certain fruit-based company to follow. And if you don't want to have to worry about egress costs and you're worried about file uploads and management in a Next.js app, maybe check out Upload Thing. Mark and I put a lot of work into this and really proud of what we built. And you'll never have to worry about these types of costs ever again. That's all I have to say about this one. Until next time, peace nerds.